Hey everyone, welcome back to Forward United. My name is James Ellars. With me today, we have Noelle Famera. Noelle, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for being here. Now, you're running for Congress in Hawaii, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. And was it District 2?
Yes, it's Hawaii District 2.
Okay,
And right now, currently, Tulsi Gabbard holds the seat, and it's an open seat race.
awesome. So how are you feeling about the race? You were telling me before we went live that the primary is in August. So pretty late primary, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty late primary out here, and it's actually our campaign is building up most of its momentum now as we're getting closer to Election Day
Awesome.
for the primary election. And it's really getting exciting to have our team expand and see how our message is getting out there and empowering people and inspiring people to get out there and vote this election.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the policies that are important to the people in Hawaii? Like, in what ways would it be different than other parts of the country? I'm sure I've worked in solar for a while, and I always heard that like it's very important energy wise out there, like sustainable energy. I feel like
Yes,
is that
Hawaii is actually leading the nation in renewable energies, and I think we can continue this movement with the proper representatives. And I personally have been advocating for renewable energy and a sustainable future for quite some time now. And I was the regional coordinator for the Green New Deal in 2016 in the Jill Stein campaign. So I know exactly how important it is out here for us to be sustainable. We got sun and wind, so there's many renewable sources that we can use. However, um, you have to integrate with our community, and I think
right?
it's very difficult when our legislators are not working with our community. And I think we get a lot of backlash, but we are also leading the nation, and I think if we can set that tone here, we can set it for the whole nation, and we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once people learn the advantages of a lot of the um, clean energy alternatives, like it's a no brainer, honestly. Like,
It
so
really is. And we have initiatives that have already been in place that push us towards being completely off of fossil fuels by 2040.
that's awesome.
And I hope to actually speed that up. Actually, I would like to see it by 2035 or 2030. I would like to see it progress further. And also for myself, I I'm pushing for the Sustainable Future Act to not just focus on getting off of fossil fuels, but also to integrate how we can uh, conserve our oceans, stop invasive species, ban fracking, and really implement these environmental regulations that are unfortunately being reversed because of the current administration.
Yeah, super important, especially in the coming years to make sure we're on the right path environmentally. Definitely. So appreciate all the work you're doing there and the advocacy
Yeah.
there. So let's jump over to UBI. So when did you first learn about UBI, and how does that kind of fit into your campaign?
So, universal basic income was I first learned about it through, of course, Andrew Yang back in April. And that's
Okay.
when I started my Testing Water campaign. And I also saw that this person actually had legitimate solutions for what the tech companies are doing and how we can help the American people, turn a profit, and how we can actually get the American people to actually make uh, money work for them or their data work for them. And he was the only progressive candidate that had a tech savvy ideology or a tech savvy perspective in how. So I of course endorsed Andrew Yang as president of the United States, and it's because of his progressive views that have shifted not only just the United States, but I believe the rest of the world. And I think we can implement a system that is a universal basic income because we already have programs that help people. why can't we just let people have the money for themselves, put it in their hands? And also, what I like about the UBI is we can go further from, implementing these tax incentives that will be given to the people from the tech companies, and also pushing for data rights and data protection, because we are selling our data essentially for free. And I think he was the only progressive candidate to talk about it. So I implemented it into my campaign back in my testing water phase back in 2019 April. And currently Tulsi Gabbard holds the seat, and I've worked with her on many pieces of legislation and policy, and she has definitely gone on board and been an advocate for this. And I think it's made a big impact throughout the country, because we needed to have more people stand up and get on board with, I guess, Yang Gang and the universal basic income perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate your support with the universal basic income. I'm curious, because you're one of the original people that are working on the Green New Deal too. How did UBI kind of working with what the Green New Deal is? Because the Green New Deal has, of course, federal jobs guarantee. Like, how do you see those two interacting with each other?
So for myself, I think that there's a lot of issues with the Green New Deal that conflict with universal basic income. And so I'm still in the process of figuring out a way that we can see. You can do a 2% wealth tax and get, implement the Green New Deal. And then you can use the tax incentive or the tax gains from tech companies for UBI. So the money's there. And what I think people believe is that the money isn't there. And it's there. It's how we're going to allocate it, where we're going to take it from, and how we're going to build our new sustainable infrastructure. And when people see that you can't just eliminate all air travel, you can't eliminate all of our buildings at a drastic measure. You have to implement it slowly. And I think the universal basic income is a very similar perspective. We have to implement it slowly. And I think we're seeing that right now with the stimulus bills, and people want more of that. And in order for me to continue to carry this torch, it has to be a beneficial thing that's going to be inevitable for all people monthly. And the Green New Deal, how we can implement that is also working with fossil fuel companies. I know that a lot of people are against the fossil fuel companies, as much as I am too, but we need to implement the change at every level possible to clean up the mess that we've already created.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And I feel like the people that actually dig into UBI, like, even if it's super, if they're super for like the Green New Deal or federal jobs guarantee, like, once you actually look into the details of UBI, like, it makes a lot of sense. Like there could still be a need for some kind of federal jobs guarantee, but I feel like universal basic income would be more impactful on a wide scale, like, immediately. Does that make sense?
Especially right now with the current pandemic and the way it's shifting our economy and the way it's shifting our lifestyle. You cannot eliminate small businesses and entrepreneurs in these jobs without having a system in place to build them up. And like, if you look at the Great Depression, what did people do? We built the programs like Social Security, for example. And I know a lot of people are like, are you for Social Security? Absolutely. But these programs stemmed from these depressions. And if we hadn't, gone through these dark times, we wouldn't know ways to help people and save them from these things. And so, for example, small businesses and entrepreneurs will be a thing of the past if we can't implement a way to help them have gains and pursue ideas and innovation.
Yeah, and I wish more people would realize, like, all we're trying to do is to prevent the situation from getting worse. Like, implementing a UBI, a universal basic income, some kind of cash aid to the people, monthly, recurring, wouldn't solve a lot of the problems right away. It would just make a lot of these problems that people are having a lot easier to solve.
Yeah, and for example, you can eliminate poverty that way, and you can give people the incentives to build the American dream and contribute to society, rather than just having funds set aside for certain things. We can Some people need health care, while other people don't need health care, and they're building their businesses or something else to that extent. But if you have a universal basic income, that individual can pay for health care, that individual can pay for housing, food, anything they need. It's pretty much a no-brainer, and the fact that we can pay for it without giving these corporations the incentives and the deductions, it's imperative that we implement it now, especially as we're in this crisis with the pandemic. Because if we don't do anything now, we're going to see the small businesses dwindle like we did in 2008.
Yeah,
but
absolutely,
at a
absolutely.
greater level.
Yes, and that's what, like, we're just barely seeing the beginning of it. Like the housing crash, the crash in 2008 was due to a housing bubble, that happened over time, and then it crashed kind of over time. What we're seeing right now is on a larger scale than that, and there hasn't been enough time passing to actually see a lot of the ramifications of what's happening right now.
No,
So,
and when 2021 comes around, when inauguration time will come around, hopefully I will be there and be able to help implement a system that can keep us afloat. Because I can tell you right now, in another year, we're probably going to see more and more businesses go out because of the current pandemic. And we need immediate solutions and resolutions to save our democracy and keep people from poverty.
yes, absolutely. And thank you for running for Congress. I know it's not easy. It's
Thank you,
not.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not an easy decision to make, and it's not an easy thing to do. But the more people that we have running for office, especially on these issues, the more progress we'll make for sure. What are some other policies that are important to you and the people of Hawaii?
Well, currently, right now, I know that my constituents have mentioned childcare,
Yeah.
and because of the pandemic, and I think that's the biggest concern for parents and those who have children that have relied heavily on our educational system to take care of our children right now. So education reform is also one of my greatest policies, along with data rights. But data rights you're currently seeing what's going on right now with the topic, which I think is good to just talk about, and talk about how we can regulate any type of invasions through technology, whether it be cyber, privacy, elections. There's so many topics, but education reform is a big issue here in Hawaii, because every city council meeting I go to, every meeting I go to, it's, when are we going to get the funding to do this? How are we going to get the funding to do that? And I think we need to implement during this time also less school days, less work weeks, like Andrew Yang has also talked about, will help the psychology of not just our teachers, but also our students and parents, but also implementing distance learning and in-class learning, and reinventing the way we've handled education, and maybe possibly eliminating these standardized tests that are forcing our children to be in a system that is common core rather than innovative, creative exploration. And that's one of the things I hope to accomplish out here is education reform.
Yeah, that's definitely needed, and it's good to tie in shorter school weeks with shorter work weeks. I haven't thought about it in that context, but I'm completely on board with both of them. Because 5 days a week for school is just kind of
8 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and I think we can eliminate that pressure, that socialized ideology, and kind of just lift it a little bit, lift the pressure off, give our children ways to integrate with the community in other ways. like expanding our community gardens and implementing education into our community um, democratic things such as the community garden or our they the excuse me or or traveling for field trips. We need to
Right.
open up these expansions outside of the classroom rather than 8 hours at the computer. Open it up for digital, virtual learning as well as in class. And we haven't experienced this before in our education system, so we need people who can run the data on that as well and see if it's beneficial for our children too. But we do need to implement a different strategy in how we're educating our youth immediately.
I like it. It's common sense. It's one of those things where you hear it, you're like, yeah, you know what, that is true. We should be doing that. So I'm on board with that. What is your opinion on what's going on right now with Trump and Twitter? Speaking of data rights and
Yes. Yeah, well, I find it interesting that he's the one that's talking about data rights when he's the one that censors everybody.
right, exactly.
It's like so for me, I've been censored this whole time. My whole campaign is being censored, but I don't have the platform to say, I'm being censored because of one post. And it's not it for me, obviously we have to regulate the internet. And that is regulating misinformation and disinformation. And that's exactly what he does. And so for me, when you have political agendas targeted towards a candidate because they speak out about data rights, it starts to get really political. And you have the current administration using that for their political advantage. And I think Twitter's doing the right job by allowing the truth to be seen for what it is. Obviously, Twitter's taken the steps to eliminate political misinformation because of what happened in the 2016 election and the interference of misinformation and disinformation that our current president contributes to and conspires to elicit more of that. And so when you look at what he's trying to do with the FISA courts and the FBI, he's misrepresenting what data rights mean. If you're a public official, you're going to have, security, okay? You're going to have that, but you shouldn't be surprised about that. But when it comes to American citizens, when their data is being infringed on by these big corporate tech companies that are selling that data to foreign nations, that's the tech censor stuff we need to talk about. That people are being censored from that knowledge, not from his tweet. So I think he's just personally with Twitter, it's a personal thing with him because Twitter's his favorite social media platform. And so he doesn't like that he doesn't have full absolute power and control over it. So, but I think Twitter's doing the right thing.
I do too. I think it's also comical that Facebook comes out and is like trying to act like the good guy in all this data privacy.
Well, I find it very interesting because Facebook is one of the biggest tech companies right now that censors information. And the only way you can actually gain algorithm or use the algorithm to gain engagement or insight is through paying him. And you can't, even if you pay him, he owns the algorithm. So even if you're throwing hundreds and thousands of dollars at the guy, he can still stop it and say, well, you're just not that engaging. Well, that's up to who? You.
Right.
And so that's the problem, is that there's no regulation over it. And he's investing in politics on the Republican side. He's contributed to the campaigns of the Republicans. Bezos has done the same thing. They've contributed to the Republican Trump campaign that has essentially censored real, voices and real liberty speakers and given them the platform to monopolize their platform, essentially.
Yeah, I wish more people would be more concerned about it. Just because it just feels like even
it's a lot of
especially
it's a lot of misinformation out there.
yes,
And so people, I believe, are getting confused. They don't know who or what's telling the truth anymore. I can tell you right now, Donald Trump is not telling the truth.
right.
He lives, he's a pathological liar. And those people exist. I know Americans are very trustworthy people. We're like, that guy wouldn't lie to us. He's our president. We're just very trustworthy people. And you're starting to see now with the current administration that the manipulation is not for the people. It's for his political agenda to get reelected. And if he was so really concerned about election interference, he would have done something years ago. The only people that were, taking action towards uh, election interference and protecting us was, Tulsi Gabbard. She actually introduced a bill last year, securing America's elections, because Democrats know that if we can't secure our elections now, how are we going to, or before the 2020 elections, how are we going to secure the 2020 elections? So that's what you had years ago, was the Democrats working to secure elections, not the Republicans. Now it's months before the general elections. He's sliding in the polls to Biden, and now it's stop
He's a victim.
mail-in voting, and it's just nonsensical.
Yeah, I hope we can move past this in 2020 onto something better, because another term of it just isn't going to end well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we need more people talking about data privacy and data rights and just technology in general. I feel like that's one of the major policies and platforms that is left out of the general discussion for some reason. Maybe because a lot of the incumbents are of the older generation that just don't get it. I don't really know.
Yeah, I think that's a lot that has to do with it. Is you have the older generations that are uncomfortable with technology and data, and they don't understand it. I myself am becoming, old when it comes to technology, especially when you look at these high school kids and how quickly they can use the internet and how fast they can take in information. But that's why you need leaders that understand data and technology, because if we don't have leaders that understand this, how are we going to protect ourselves? How are we going to advance ourselves? And none of the leaders talk about this, because when you mention things like blockchain and cybersecurity, these are words that the older generation isn't familiar with or in their vocabulary. So it's learning something new. It's taking in something new that they're not familiar with or can even use or comprehend. It's foreign to them. So they just have to feel safe enough to allow representatives to come forward to discuss these things as well. So I think a lot of people get scared when we talk about cybersecurity and cyber invasions and election interference and things like that. And that's where we're at today. And that's why we need representatives to secure these elections and to secure our voices and our votes, to keep democracy alive and liberty alive.
Yeah, and we need more people in office that actually understand this. So again, thank you for running, because it seems like you have a pretty good grasp on this. And like it's honestly one of the most important topics moving into the future, just because the way just data is going and the way it can be manipulated, and you know what I mean? Like there's just so many different factors.
Yeah, and the implementation of AI. So you have to, yeah, exactly. So, when you have other countries that have put their advancements and their funding towards cyber warfare and technological warfare, we have to readjust how war is being, or election interference is being done. It's not the old ways. It's not, they're not attacking other countries the way that we used to. They're attacking it through cyber warfare, surveillance. And so you're seeing what happened with the surveillance state in Hong Kong. And we don't want to become like that. We need to let that be assigned to us, because Hong Kong's looking to us. These countries are looking to us to protect data rights, to protect freedoms, to protect liberties. And this is going to be something that we all face on a back end level that we're not aware of. Like, people think of things as always front end development, what you're seeing on your computer, but there's a lot that's going on the back end, and what's going on with these algorithms, and how countries can get involved in disseminating misinformation.
Yeah, just one example of that. Like for example, I've read that there are TVs being made right now that they will emit like a tone that humans can't hear it, but phones will pick it up, so the TVs can actually ping this sound and
Okay,
figure
yeah.
out who's in the room just by pinging the phones. Like, that's just one of many examples of like data right infringement, where they could just like, hey, let's see who's in the room, and just
That's
ping.
cyber warfare. It's cyber warfare. They're using the electronics to target and disseminate information in many multitude of ways. And I think when we look at our country and where we've come from, it's overcoming division. And so, if you're dealing with division, that should be a red flag. Something should be waving to you. What is this? Why is this happening? Let's analyze this. What's going on here that we need to address? And if we can come with a perspective of why this division is emerging in our country, we'll be able to solve where it came from if we follow the proper steps to clarifying truth. And we're in the age of information, and now we're entering the age of disinformation. And so that is where we, as the next generation, have a responsibility to uphold the values of truth, the values of liberty, and the values of justice in all ways. And the data rights are going to go to, now you have to look at what China's developing, you have to look at what Russia's developing, and they were successful. They were successful in the 2016 election, and how can we stop them? And, I started thinking about the 2016 election after everything happened with data rights. And Hillary Clinton was talking about war and Russia and what they were doing, but she never really informed the public of what was really going on at that time. And I think that in itself didn't give clarity to the American people what other nations are doing to interfere in our democracy and our freedoms, and what extent they will go to do that as well.
Right, and we need to figure that out fast, because it's only getting worse as time goes on. So that's definitely something we need more people in office that are actually concerned about that and can actually speak to what is actually happening versus just blowing it off as some futuristic
foreign policy that's built with data rights for American people. Because if you think about it, all Americans are subject to any nation gathering their information right now for the profits, because of these technopolies that are selling the data, and they can use this information against American citizens. And I think it's important that we have representatives that understand this, to implement a foreign policy that protects us from cyber invasion, cyber influence, election interference, and these things. And what concerns me the most right now is how the administration, we have a resigning president who's been impeached for abuse of power and, communicating with foreign officials during his campaign. So, and then we have him publicly asking for their assistance. So, are we going to allow this or not? And that's what I want the American people to do. We allowed it. Now let's not allow it. Let's not allow it to happen in front of us. Because as much as he lies, he also tells the truth right in front of you too, and just manipulates the information. He's quite intelligent in how he paints a picture for the American people that actually jeopardizes all of us. And so it's about time that we have representatives that hold people accountable for what they're doing, including the tech companies that participated in this, maybe unknowingly or maybe knowingly. And that's what we need to investigate and get to the bottom of. And we need a Congress that will investigate this and continue to investigate it even after the general election and what happened before, because it's all there.
Right. It's all there. The only reason he wasn't kicked out of office is because the Senate is mostly Republican, and that's literally the only reason. If anybody who watched the impeachment hearings can very blatantly see that he did everything that they were alleging. And
I really like to reinforce people to listen to the impeachment hearings, because a lot of people weren't paying attention, and
Right.
they just listen to what is on the internet or Facebook.
Right.
And if you read the Mueller report, and if you listen to the impeachment hearings, and you see even Hillary Clinton went under oath, under that Republican Senate and Congress, and so she was able to still handle it, give the proper information over, and she wasn't charged. So if this is like me, I didn't personally vote for her. I was, part of the Jill Stein campaign, but I gave this woman the benefit of the doubt when the election, happened, and a year went by, and I decided to go back in time and see what those debates were about, what her message was, and what we missed and what went wrong. And I started to see that there were some things that we, the American people, and myself, didn't catch. And she had some warning signs there that I believe she could have explained herself more to prevent this. And then a part of me also feels responsible for this too, because a lot of people said, you're a third party candidate, you helped get Trump elected. And what I would like to tell people is that the electoral did that. And so it's important that we have an electoral that sees that the American people need new leadership too, and that will vote with us.
Right. Hopefully we're there, because we need solutions sooner than later. Where can everybody go to follow and support your campaign?
They can go to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. At Twitter and Instagram, it's at Elect Noelle. And you can go to electnoelle.com, or you can go on Facebook at Noelle for Congress.
Awesome. Well, we need to talk again before the primary, for
Great.
sure. Thank you so much for joining me. We need to interact more. So
definitely, it was a great conversation, and I'm glad to talk more about this and get this message out to people. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain myself.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So awesome. Thank you for joining, Noelle. We will let everybody go, and then we'll continue from there. So thanks again, Noelle.
Thank you. Bye.